Hey everybody, and welcome back to Gulf Coast Classics. Today again we're looking at our 1924 Dodge, also known as the Dodge 116. This car was made from 1923 to 1925. A lot of people look at this car and want to compare it to a Model T, for instance. This would have been much more luxurious option than a Model T. One of these Dodge Brothers cars in 1924 would have cost you $895 versus the $260 that a Model T would have cost. And really, if you've driven the two, you can really see the build quality difference between the mass-produced Model T and this much shorter run on this 1924 Dodge Brothers. I'm going to take you for a quick walk around and kind of show you the features of the car and a couple of the key things that I think are unique about it. Up front, we have a lot of chrome, which is pretty common of the era. Um, like most cars of that age, we've got a spot for a hand crank. This car actually hand cranks pretty nicely. We've got another video on that. If you look at our channel, it quite easy to start. Electric headlights. No kerosene headlights on this car. This was kind of the transition where the cars are kind of going away from having both electric and kerosene. 12-volt system on this car. Here you'll find, in today's standard, this is a pretty big wheel, 24-inch steel wheel on a split rim. A lot of the Model Ts of this era would have had a similar size wheel, but their wheel would have been made out of wood instead of steel. Nice brass fixtures on this car. You can really see the details they put into it when they built this. The parking lamps and the door handles, and some of the trim inside is lined in brass. Really high quality top. This is probably a similar quality to what you would see on a Mercedes of this era. We've got a vinyl exterior, multiple layers with a nice cloth liner on the inside. We've driven this car a lot in the Florida summer, and just does a wonderful job of keeping the heat off you when you're driving. Standard doors in the front with the suicide door in the back. Very solid feel when you close the door too. This car had a 55-mile-an-hour speedometer in it, and the car would do 45 to 50. This car will still do that even though it's 100 years old. Really, I feel like its happy spot is more around the 35-mile-an-hour range. This top would fold back into these retainers here when you're driving. Kind of neat feature on this car is the old mechanical fuel gauge. We rebuilt that gauge when we got the car. I thought it was pretty neat, and I thought it had to work, so we rebuilt that entire gauge, so it's reading accurately now with a 15-gallon tank. We always use a lead additive in our older cars. Keeps the valves from sticking. One thing that we also added to the car, that's just the only thing really that differs from stock on this car, is the addition of this extended tailpipe that we put on it. Originally, when we got the car, the exhaust was coming out just in front of that rear wheel there. Pretty sure that was the factory spot for it to come out, which was fine, except for in the heavy traffic here in St. Pete, with the top up, we were getting a lot of fumes inside of it when we were stuck at stoplights. And so I didn't like that so much, so we just extended it and brought it out the back. This car was in a museum in Iowa for many years after its restoration. So that's where you see the 1924 Iowa license plate on it. Coming here to the driver's side, pretty standard controls. Uh, you've got your horn here in the center, and you have a throttle on the column, much like most cars of its age, even the Model A in the 30s. So it had the throttle and the spark advance on the column. The spark advance is right behind it here. You go up to advance it, and back down to bring it down. We've got a 3-speed gearbox here. This is an unsynchronized transmission, so you'll see in our driving video, you really have to double clutch it to keep the gears from grinding, and rev match it when you downshift. Really, we only use 2 gears in this car, unless we're climbing a steep hill or coming back in the driveway here at the warehouse. First gear is just a crawl. Now, this is a 2,500-pound car though, with 35 horsepower, so that super low first gear is nice to get it up a steep hill. Here you've got your ignition and your headlight switch there. The starter, if you can see it down there, is a button on the floor, just to the right of that gas pedal there. And that button box is both the starter and controls the ammeter as well. We'll come here under the hood. And you'll see we've got a belt-driven fan. We'll go to the other side here in a second. I'll show you the water pump on it. Pretty standard side draft carburetor. This is a starter generator. That's actually chain driven off the front of the engine, kind of like a golf cart engine. It it'll both start it and provide power to act as an alternator. This is kind of neat here. This little float here is how you check your oil. A little float in the oil pan that tells you what your oil level is. This fuel system here, this is a vacuum system. It keeps pressure on the carburetor, much like the Studebakers of its time. Same theory, design there. Here's our steering gearbox here. Of course, no power steering in this car, but with the thin tires, you don't need it. There's no moto meter on this car. When we first got it in, I really thought it needed one to watch the temperature here, but we drove this on several summer days and got stuck in traffic jams with it, and it really never gave any issues. When we first started driving the car, I brought a thermal infrared thermometer with me so I could shoot the radiator and make sure what wasn't running hot. And for a 100-year-old car, these weren't really meant to sit in traffic, but for a 100-year-old car, it did pretty well. Here we got our 4 spark plugs. This car came with a little fuel syringe from the factory. This would help you on your cold starts. So these little cups here are for putting fuel in when you'd cold start it. This would help prime the engine. Of course, you pull the choke, but then you would take your little syringe and you drop it in these cups. And these are just little needle valves in there, and you'd unscrew them, and that would let the fuel go right into the top of the cylinder. This is the water pump for the car. Pretty different than most water pumps of today. This is a chain-driven water pump. This runs off the crankshaft. The belt is only for the fan. In this is the water pump impeller comes in here, and then it also runs your distributor. And there is the Spark Advance rod for the distributor there. And all that does is it just twists this distributor. What happens electrically in your cars of today is all mechanical here, controlled by you on the steering wheel. And you can speed up and slow down the engine by how much you advance or retard the spark. We'll show you that in the driving video as well. And that's about it. So stay tuned. In our next video, we'll get it out of the warehouse here and show it some daylight and go take it for a spin. Hopefully, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in St. Pete, Florida. So hopefully traffic isn't too crazy, but we'll keep it in the industrial park if nothing else. And we'll get it up to speed and show you guys how it drives.